The New York State Department of Transportation presents the DOT POD.
And welcome in to the DOT POD. I'm Josh Heller.
And I'm Anya Cardos.
And we are delighted to have you joining us. And Anya, we have entered snow and ice season here in New York, no doubt about that. We've already witnessed New York State Department of Transportation members in action, not only preparing for the impact of hazardous conditions, but also tackling the jobs of clearing the roadways during and after storms.
And today we're going to look at what it takes to provide a safe transportation network during wintry weather, while at the same time balancing our commitment to being good stewards of the environment.
And joining us here on the DOT POD today in the studio are Rob Fitch and Joe Thompson. First of all, thank you both for joining us. So first of all, just tell us a little bit about yourselves and and what you do for the department. Rob, we'll start with you.
All right. Good afternoon, Josh and Anya. Glad to be here. Again, my name is Rob Fitch. I'm the Director of Transportation Maintenance for New York State DOT, and I oversee statewide operations for maintenance, including snow and ice.
And Joe?
I'm Joe Thompson. I'm the Snow and Ice Program Manager for New York State DOT.
Welcome, both of you. Let's take a look at what goes into a snow and ice response. What are some of the techniques and de-icing materials that the New York State Department of Transportation uses currently to combat hazardous conditions before, during, and after a winter weather event? What's that like for you?
Well, as far as some of the techniques and materials, it's important to point out that while road salt is one of the materials that we use, the primary technique that we use is the mechanical removal of snow and ice from the roadway. Our goal is to remove the snow mechanically to the extent that we can, and then use snow and ice control materials to help keep the roads in a safe manner.
And I like the way you put before, during, and after, because it's definitely three phases of a storm. And a lot of times, before an event, we're looking to just prevent the bond of ice to pavement, and that's what we strive to do throughout the entire event. And then during, I call it the anti-compaction part of this storm, where we're looking to not create hard pack and create just enough slush on the road. And then, of course, after is cleanup.
So take us to before a storm starts. We're watching weather conditions, but they change dramatically and often very quickly. So how are you guys able to make sure that you're prepared not only with the material but also with the manpower to get out there prior to any type of storm starting to materialize?
Well, we say in maintenance that snow and ice is 365 a year. We're doing it all year long. We're always making sure our equipment's ready, making sure our staff has been hired, has been trained, and is ready to go. But once we get into the season, we're always looking at the weather. We have a good relationship with National Weather Service, with our folks in the Albany Mesonet team, giving us good briefings, so we have a good idea when the weather's coming. And when we're aware that there's going to be weather imminent, we're out there performing our pre-storm treatments.
And it starts with good sound policy. And we have an excellent policy from years and years of experience. And that culminates into good planning and good operational planning. And then when you have that good preparation and Mother Nature provides the opportunity, we're in a good place for success.
Let's talk about striking a balance. We mentioned that off the top of this episode. Road salt, that's been used for generations to reduce accidents on the roadways. But how is NYSDOT striking a balance right now between driver safety and concerns over the migration of this material into nearby properties, waterways, and the impact that can have on our natural resources?
So during our Snow and Ice University, I use a Venn diagram to describe this, and it's a good way to show it because you have cost, the environment, and level of service. And of course, level of service is safety. And we look at that as a three-legged stool and trying to maintain that balance. So if you look at it in terms of where those three things intersect, that's what we're always trying to strive to get to.
Right. And, the public expects us to keep our roads safe. They expect us to be good practitioners, but they also expect us to be good environmental stewards, as well as being fiscally responsive as well. So having a good, solid program allows us to do that.
And obviously, when it comes to safety and it comes to expectations, there is something to be said for the fact that, after a big storm, when roads are being cleaned up, that people need to be smart about when they go out, if they need to go out. Certainly, there are instances where people can't help but be on the road, obviously emergency services and things like that. But, when roads are not safe, it's important that people understand that those roads are not safe. Listen to, things that we're saying.
Absolutely. Our snow and ice response plan acknowledges there's going to be snow and ice on the road. We don't have a bare roads policy. There are folks that believe we have a bare roads policy, that we want to have wet roads during an event. That is not the case. We can have 2 to 3 inches or more of snow on a road during an event. And in order to give our folks enough room to keep the roads safe and do the work they need, we really do like people to stay off the roads to the extent they can. We do know there are times when folks have to go to work, folks have to go to school, emergency services and things of that nature. They have to be out there, but we really want folks to think twice about their travel plans when there is inclement weather.
Do you think also right now we should kind of begin to rethink as members of the public, snow and ice response, and maybe level set our expectations in the hours and maybe days after a severe impact of a storm?
Oh, I absolutely think so. In many ways, I think we're victims of our own success. The men and women who do the snow and ice for us are outstanding professionals, and they do such an incredible job that I think we constantly raise that bar, and we inadvertently set the expectations higher than what they should be.
And that naturally happens. I mean, we talk about level of service, and that's the thing that everybody sees, right? They don't necessarily see the cost, and they don't necessarily see the impact on the environment, but they see the level of service when they go out and they hit the roads. So that's the thing that I think drives a lot of response and a tendency to try to make things as good and safe as they can, as quickly as you can. So that has driven the expectation, I think, for the public.
Now, Josh, you mentioned earlier about emergency services and things of that nature. I think one of the things that separates New York State DOT from some other smaller municipalities is the level of our roadways. A lot of municipalities perform a lower level of service during off hours. But in DOT, our level of service is 24/7 during an event, because we're not just connecting folks to the state system. We're connecting communities together. We're providing access to those emergency services so folks can get to the hospitals to work, to get to work and do the critical things they need. And so the commerce can move where it needs to go across the country.
It's simple as life and death. These are life and death situations. Not only the safety for the people on the roads, but safety for people who are stuck in their houses, who did go out on the road and maybe need to be helped out. So certainly extremely important. Let's talk about the Adirondack Road Salt Reduction Task Force. Was spearheaded by NISDOT and the Department of Environmental Conservation, focused on winter road management practices within the Adirondack Park. Can you share why the work of the task force was important and where we go from here now that the report has been issued?
Well, it's a great question, Josh. The task force was an acknowledgement that road salt is a concern. We need to be aware of it. We need to manage it. And the task force itself, not just the state agency members, but all of the members involved were tremendous partners. They put in a lot of work, and they put out a report that I think we can all be proud of. Every task force member can be proud of. But one of the things that I think it did for us was that it really validated our program in many ways. It really showed that New York State DOT has a state-of-the-art program. We have state-of-the-art equipment. We have top-notch operators. We have a great training program, but that doesn't mean that there's no room for improvement. Every snow and ice program, we know there's room to evaluate your program and to make improvements and make adjustments, and that's something that we're really looking forward to doing as we get into these pilot programs a bit more.
And I talked earlier about the level of service and the three-legged stool of cost, the environment level of service. And I look at this as a fantastic opportunity because now we're bolstering one of those legs in the environment and drawing attention to it. We've got a saying in maintenance that what gets watched gets watched. So now we're paying attention to this, and not that we didn't before, but now it's got additional focus, which is always a good thing.
You mentioned validation of the program. Tell us a little bit about that program and where it falls.
Well, something we did in advance of the task force, we wanted to go out, and this wasn't a requirement of the legislation, but this is something that DOT wanted to do to kind of do a level set across the state. We did what we called regional roundtables. And every region of the state went out and spoke with the municipal snow and ice practitioners, basically our cities, towns, and villages all across the state. And we had these regional roundtables just to talk about snow and ice, okay? Talk about some of the challenges you have, what your programs look like. And what we found overwhelmingly was most municipalities struggle with funding for basic things such as salt storage. Many salt piles across the state aren't even under cover. So we identified that was an issue. We identified that many programs struggle with having good application rates and the ability to monitor how much salt they're using because they don't have the equipment to do that. So nor do they have the training needed to train their folks on how to calibrate their equipment and how to really understand the impacts of salt. So that was a good validation for our program. To see that we are national leaders in that, quite honestly.
So now that some of these key points have been identified in this report, can you talk about the top ones for you and Joe, Rob, and where we go from here now that this report has been issued?
Well, Joe mentioned what gets watched, and we say that a lot in maintenance. And really, what we mean by that is, if we're paying attention to it, everyone is going to pay attention to it. So we're focusing more on the management of our salt use, meaning we're paying attention to our application rates, we're paying attention to post-storm reviews, we're paying attention to the impacts that our salt had on our level of service, and we're just checking that balance to make sure that the amount of salt we're putting out on the roadways is doing its job, and it's not doing too much, we're not being too aggressive, but at the same point, we want to make sure that we're using enough salt, because what we find is when you don't use enough salt, you end up with that hard pack that Joe was referencing, and you get ice bonded to the asphalt, which requires a whole lot more work to get off. So it's really about just making sure we're using the appropriate amount of salt and getting the most bang for our buck.
You talk about equipment and how, New York State has top of the line equipment that many other municipalities just don't have. Talk us a little bit about the equipment and how it helps you, to be able to monitor these things, to adjust these things, and to make sure that you are finding that balance.
Well, to put it in context, let's go back a few years to, where the technology came from for ground speed spreading of material. And it really came from the agricultural industry and when people would spread manure on the field. And, with that, now we're looking at electric over hydraulic systems that are much more accurate, much more reliable, and as far as what material can come out, it's relative to ground speed. So the faster the truck goes, the more material it goes out, the slower it goes, the less the material goes out. And those settings now you dial right into. Our application rates are in pounds per lane mile. So we have our recommended rates based on storm type and temperature and what works. And those are based on years of experience. National studies. We're part of a Clear Roads group, which is a great research consortium of 38 member states, and a tremendous amount of research gets done with Clear Roads, and we based our application rates on those things and others.
Yeah, and to the equipment, there's a picture that I like to use in some of our presentations that shows an old dump truck with a couple of guys in the back throwing shovelfuls of dirt off the back of the truck.
You don't still do that?
No, we don't do that at all. But the reason why we like that picture is it's a good segue to talk about the things that we are doing, how our equipment is state of the art, and it allows us to be very precise with the material that we're putting out. But more importantly, not only do we have that ability, we now have automatic vehicle locating equipment on our trucks that allows us to not only know where the vehicle is and what speed it's going, which we've had that information for years, but this year we've invested in some equipment that allows us to know how much material we're spreading out the back at any given point in time as well. So not only can we can be precise with the material we're putting out, we can also be precise with our record keeping for where that material is going.
And Joe, you mentioned this also, but speed's important, especially when it comes to how much salt is coming out and the spray of it. Talk about why it is so important that these vehicles go a certain speed fast enough, but not too fast to be able to make sure that the right amount of material is getting to the right places?
Josh, I love this question because I say salt does one of four things when it comes off the back of a truck. It either bounces off the road because the truck may be going too fast. It gets blown off the road from traffic behind it, and it's off the road, not doing its job. Or it's too cold that it gets suspended and then it gets plowed off the road, or it turns to brine and does its job. So if a truck is going too fast, it's that first scenario where salt's going to bounce off the road and not stay in the lane.
So basically, they're not doing this to annoy drivers.
Right.
This is for a specific purpose. Speed.
Absolutely. Everything we do is about balance. So our maximum speed that we like to travel is 35 miles per hour when we're spreading salt. 35 strikes that balance of being able to keep the salt on the road as reasonably well as we can, while at the same time still allowing traffic to move at a reasonable pace.
And there's another tool, and people may not see it, but the next time you look at a plow truck, look at the sides of it, and you'll see saddle tanks. And in those saddle tanks is typically brine, and the material can get pre-wet. And as it comes out of the truck, it's activated, it's heavier, and that helps to stay in the lane too.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was something I was going to bring up, because I think a lot of people are starting to hear about it more and certainly starting to see it on the roads oftentimes prior to storm starting, and that is brine, which is not just for pickles anymore. Talk about why brine is effective, especially prior to the snow and ice coming in, but also why it's preferred sometimes, as a pre-application.
So I call it pinstripe pride when you see those white stripes on the road, because you get the brine out ahead of time. And we mix brine to a solution of 23.3%. And that's an optimum carrying capacity of the solution. And that's where it is the most effective. But right as soon as it hits the ground, it's either going to get diluted or evaporate. But with that brine on the road ahead of time, you are ahead of the curve when the frozen precipitation starts to hit, that you're going to create that brine layer, that bond breaker between the pavement and the frozen precip. The other thing about a liquid application is it's more accurate to spread a liquid than it is a solid. You're just going to get a better reading for it.
The challenge of going out with a granular material before an event is if you go out before the event, the salt is going to get rushed off the road, more than likely from traffic. And if you wait until it starts snowing, then the only place where it's applied is at the beginning of your beat, and the end of your beat is not going to have any treatment on it until you get there. So the brine that we put down allows us to instantly be treating the road as soon as that frozen precip starts.
And this is stuff that you make, in your facilities. You're actually putting together that brine ahead of time.
Absolutely. We have brine makers. But, a goal of our program, we realized the benefits of brine several years ago, and we've committed to increasing our brining capabilities every year. So every year we increase the number of brine makers we had, the number of brine storage units that we have, as well as the number of brine application units. We want to continually be growing that program.
Let's get back to the Adirondack Road Salt Reduction Task Force and their report. It also contains some recommendations for an expanded Adirondack Park Road Salt Reduction pilot program. Can you talk about that pilot program and where we are with this as winter weather is making its way into the Adirondack Park?
Well, sure, Anya. We initiated a couple of Adirondack Road Salt Reduction pilots a couple of years ago, actually, in advance of this task force. One of them is on Route 9N on the west side of Lake George. The other is on Route 86 in Lake Placid. And those are reduced salt pilots. And as part of the task force report, we are committed to continuing those pilots, as well as we're going to add an additional pilot, which is going to be a liquids-only pilot, meaning we're not going to spread any granular material. We're going to be using just liquid brine as a treatment before and during events. And that's going to be up in Clinton County. Is that Route 9 and 9N, Joe?
And 373.
373 up in Clinton County. And then in addition to those physical locations, there's other things that we've really committed to doing, such as the installation of our vehicle locating equipment that I mentioned, which is a product that will allow us to track the amount of salt we're putting out at any time. Installing that equipment was a huge investment for us, a huge opportunity for us, and we're looking forward to that. We're really doing that as a nod to the task force. And also, it's an opportunity for us to increase our management, our training and our management for snow and ice events. We're going to be looking at doing increased reporting of our salt usage, increased post-storm reviews.
Yeah, and it's just this podcast is a tremendous opportunity to get the word out of all the different things we're doing and the good things that we're doing, because that it's an API, which is an application programming interface in the truck to the material spreaders. But in addition to that, we were also measuring road temperature. So the road temperature is recorded along with the application rates. So then you can if what you're doing is on target. And to enhance that as well as a forward-facing camera on the truck itself, so you can see the condition of the road. Now you see the condition of the road. Obviously, you haven't put the material down, but in that next pass, you can see how that worked. And we've got some other tremendous partnerships with University of Albany Center for Excellence and Excite. And they've actually done some AI work with our 5-on-1 cameras to look at the conditions of the road based on that machine learning. And to me, the next logical step with that is to use the forward-facing camera of a truck with machine learning to see how well the application rate for the temperature, how well you did.
All these technological advances and the different infrastructure that we have is fantastic. However, none of it matters if the employees aren't continually learning, continually training to be able to utilize them to the best of their ability. Talk about the training for the boots on the ground for everyone, and from obviously executives in the main office to all the way down to those who are out there, so that everyone is on the same page and able to actually implement what we're trying to.
Well, Josh, I'm going to contend that our snow and ice operators are the best in the country. We have a very robust snow and ice program. We have a unique combination in New York State of a very robust winter weather pattern along with very robust traffic demands. When you look at other states fall short in one of two of those areas. Either they don't get the weather or they don't get the traffic. We get both here. So we have a very robust program, and our operators are highly skilled and highly trained. Every operator receives what we call OPP training, or one-person plowing training, which means they perform snow and ice operations by themselves in the cab of that truck. And if you've ever looked in the cab of one of those trucks, there's a whole lot of levers in there for them to be paying attention to while they're driving down the road during potentially blinding snow. So it's incredible what they do. But all of the interest in road salt and salt management over the last several years has really been an opportunity for us to increase that training even better, to where we've enhanced our training by adding environmental components, by adding components about the impacts of road salt. Because what we find is, the men and women that do this work for us, they also live here, right? They like to be outdoors. They like to hunt here. They like to fish here. They want their property values to be good. They want their kids to be able to enjoy the nature as it is. So we found that by giving them this additional environmental training, it provides a little perspective for what we're doing. And that same environmental training we send to all of our supervisors as well as all of our managers. In fact, we just concluded what we call Snow University last week, right, Joe?
Yep. And I like when you liken the image of the two guys, tossing the material out the back of the truck. It's the plow truck of today is not your father's plow truck. You get into it, and it is a complex piece of equipment that requires a lot of training, and is a state-of-the-art piece of equipment that is well technologically advanced.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Rob and Joe. One final question, or actually two, before you leave us. What is your favorite road trip in the state?
To me, any good road trip is an opportunity to take advantage of a trip that you have to make. And I think that a good road trip takes advantage of local flavor. So for me, local flavor is food. So I like to enjoy some of the various foods across the country, or across the state. So when you're in the southern tier, enjoy some Speedies, or enjoy some pierogies. Or if you're in Utica, you got to try the tomato pie, or the chicken riggies in Syracuse, or beef on weck out in Buffalo. So take advantage to enjoy that local flavor and see what the different regions of New York State has. And I'm sure by saying that, I've offended a lot of people because I missed out. So maybe we got to have a little web board or something so everybody can point out all the things that knucklehead forgot.
All right, favorite road trip and song for you, Rob?
I like funk, so anything funky.
Food and funky. Okay, Joe, what about you?
I'd say any trip up in the Adirondacks during the fall when the leaves are going. It's just a perfect time of year, and I like that. I like the fall anyway. And for the song, I probably going to say, because it's close to Christmas, maybe Holiday Road.
You can get behind that.
I
Get
like
behind
that
that. It's
one.
very nice. Very nice. Well, again, thank you both for taking the time to sit with us and to help educate us and hopefully educate our listeners a little bit. We really do appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Be sure to find us on wherever you find your podcast. Follow us, toss in a like, toss in a follow if you can. You can also find us on all your social media networks. Anya, thanks so much. Another fun one.
Oh, this was a good one, and lots of great information.
Absolutely. We'll see you right back here on the DOT BOD.